A life of harmony. How many of us get to live such a life? For this one virtuoso, Samaon Sulaiman, the harmony is a result of his faith, his family, his community blending seamlessly into his art, and his chosen instrument, the kutyapi, where in the Philippines. And the music is reflected and influenced by other forms. By the muted colors of a malong, by the vibrant company of weavers, by the fire and strength of brass workers, all creating a continuing current of folk art. Where in the Philippines? It is a current that colors and charges an entire lifestyle. Born of will, tempered by faith, shared by many. This is the world of the Maguindanao Virtuoso, Samaon Sulaiman, where in the Philippines. It is a world that we explore in this edition of Travel Time, as we begin our series on the 1993 winners of the Gawad Manlilikha ng Bayan. The awards for National Living Treasures highlights the significance of traditional arts and culture by seeking out traditional artists with outstanding creativity and consummate skill. In seeking them out and honoring them, the National Commission on Culture and the Arts ensures that the awardee passes on his or her skill to others. This week on Travel Time, we begin to know these artists, not only through their works, but through the worlds in which they live. They are worlds very different from ours. But in knowing them, we go beyond ourselves to realize that so many different standards of beauty define the Filipino. I'm Susan Calo Medina. Join me as I take you to discover the world of Samaon Sulaiman, Maguindanao Virtuoso.
To the modern Filipino, the concept of what an artist is has been influenced by the notions of individuality and self-expression, torment, fame, and adulation. For us, artists should go against the grain, burn out, command high prices while going in every conceivable direction. But there is a world where another kind of artist is more highly appreciated. A world where the very notion of what an artist is and does may not even exist. In this world of small communities by mountains and seas and forests and lakes, the artist is also a priest and a farmer, a craftsman and community worker. Like all others, this man is bound by custom law and by religion, by tradition and by the cycle of life. There is nothing extraordinary about him, and yet nothing ordinary.
Allahu Akbar.
It is this oneness, this integrity with the land and the community that enables the traditional artist to distill his experiences and transform these into skill. In the case of Samaon Sulaiman, a Maguindanao barber and an imam, at the mosque in Libutan, faith and a sense of community have combined to hone such a skill. The medium he has been gifted in is music, and the instrument that best expresses this skill is the two-stringed lute or kutyapi. Though simple, the kutyapi is a technically demanding instrument. One that Sulaiman has mastered enough to be accorded the honor of Gawad Manlilikha ng Bayan by the National Commission on Culture and the Arts, last year.
We often find ourselves asking, how has this or that artist changed the world? In the case of the traditional artist of the Philippines, the question should be, how has the world changed this or that artist? How have the colors of his land, the tenets of his faith, the cycles of his calendar affected and influenced his skills? Paano naging tula, awit o tugtog ang kanyang pamamahay, paniniwala at pagkain? Pagbalik namin, isang sulyap sa buhay at kultura ng Maguindanao, ang Maguindanao ni Samaon Sulaiman, manlilikha ng bayan.
Maguindanao. The name refers to the Muslim area of the old Cotabato province in the southwestern portion of Mindanao. The province is bounded by Lanao del Sur on the north, by North Cotabato in the east, by the Moro Gulf in the west, and by Sultan Kudarat in the south. It is a land of great plains and rich riverlands. The province's most famous landmark, the Rio Grande de Mindanao, and other tributaries have combined to deposit silt along the banks. The result is a fertile soil and a rich agricultural land, peopled by the largest of the Filipino Islamic groups, the Maguindanaos. Unlike the Maranaos of Lake Lanao or the Tausugs of the Sulu Seas, the Maguindanaos are an inland-dwelling Islamic group. Rice cultivators rather than fishermen, they made up a sultanate, an independent political state centered on the lower valley of the Rio Grande de Mindanao. It was at the end of the 15th century that Islam was introduced to Maguindanao by the revered Sharif Mohammed Kabungsuan. The intense degree of Islamic consciousness, plus the vestiges of an older, pre-Islamic culture, have combined to give the Maguindanao people a highly sophisticated, yet to the visitor, rarely seen culture. The main entry to the province, Cotabato City, strikes the visitor as a melting pot of many types, rather than as the home of the country's largest Islamic group. A stone hill towers above the plain and the city, a natural watchtower overlooking the second largest river in the Philippines and the longest in Mindanao. Around these two landmarks of hill and river, the city has grown. The city's landmarks speak of cultural diversity and political unity. At the market, the produce of fish and vegetable point to a rich and productive environment. as do the exotic fruits, the durian, the marang, the bananas, and the rambutans that spill over street-side stalls. One may think that it is a land of settlers, for the babble of street and market resonates with snatches of Ilonggo and Ilocano, Cebuano and Tagalog. But Cotabato City's main government structures tell the visitor the real identity of the province and its people, as well as the dreams of its leaders. The plains and towns of Dinaig, Datupiang, Maganoy, and Buluan are home to the Maguindanao. In their culture, the province finds its most enduring identity. One that the passing visitor may miss unwittingly.
Relation to the Maranaos, we are residing in one contiguous area. Llano del Sur and Llano del Norte is geographically proximate to Maguindanao. These are the places where the Maranaos live. With the Tiro rice, for instance, the Maguindanao actually live together with the Tiro rice, although there are some areas where Tiro rice really dominate. In parts of Maguindanao, in parts of Sultan Kudarat, there are Tiruray communities which live side by side with the Maguindanao communities. With the Tausug, of course, we are not geographically proximate. Essentially, the Maguindanao is a subdued people, meaning they do not relate effectively with the outside world, even from the very start. This can be attributed to the area where the Maguindanaos live. For instance, they live around the river, around the Rio Grande de Mindanao, in which communities develop by the river banks. Unlike the Maranaos grew up around the lake. Parang mas nakikita nila yung relationship nila with the outside world. The Maguindanaos are not aggressive. They relate with people in a longer period of time. Revealing out themselves is quite difficult. Parang mahirap sa kanila na maipakita kagad kung ano yung inner nila, self nila. Yung introspective sila.
Such subtle refinement and introspection is balanced by the communal love for Maguindanao festivity and sport, such as the stirring and engrossing game once played by the noblemen only, the Sipa sa Manggis.
I mean, they would relate themselves effectively with the beauty of nature.
Okay.
They would find that as an expression of themselves. And because the people is introspect, they are inward looking, they very much cherish their relationship with nature. definitely they also express that in their appreciation of beauty in whatever things that can relate to that.
A refined sensibility, heightened by the precepts of Islam, plus the impositions of a feudal system that has only recently been replaced by the concept of a national government. These have colored Maguindanao culture so that it remains a mix of the Islamic and the pre-Islamic. Yet the dynamism of the culture was most recently tested in the past decades of ideological difference and Muslim-Christian conflict.
An expression of certain situations in the society also has its roots in the original art forms. Like for instance, during the time of martial law, there were conflicts between the rebels and the government forces, and of course, many people would side with the rebels. And then you would note that there were art forms that were developed, like for instance, yung dendekan. Dendekan is the expression of the heroism of the people who fought against the government. Yung how they won in a battle, the way they hold their arms.
Today, with Islam as the most influential force in their lives, the Maguindanao people face the question of national integration with both hopes for peace and progress and the continuance of their Islamic way of life. They bring with them a culture that has been burnished by conflict and strengthened through time. These make the Maguindanao a people of both sensitivity and bravery. The examples of past bravery and leadership have colored the distant and recent past with names like Sultan Kudarat, Datu Untog Matalam, Sultan Mastura Kudarat III, and Datu Otto. These have given the Maguindanaos the ideological foundation as well as the cultural ideal. But in their arts and their music, the Maguindanao may find his own place among the Islamic communities of the Philippines.
The world of the Maguindanao. When we return, we focus on Barangay Libutan in the town of Maganoy and on the imam and barber who has made the rhythms of the town material for his own expression.
Some 70 kilometers outside Cotabato City lies the very heartland of the Maguindanao culture. The road from the city winds through the hilly landscape. The visitor views the hills and the scattered forest groves, giving way to rice fields, lakes, and settlements. And it is from the landscape that one gleans important insights into the Maguindanao culture. A culture of farmers once under the feudal control of territorial leaders. While the Maguindanao have been heavily scarred, perhaps even psychologically affected by the violence of the past and their own feudal history, their lives remain anchored by their faith and by their art. This is especially so in the heartland of Maguindanao, in the towns of Maganoy and Datupiang. Libutan in the town of Maganoy is the home of Samaon Sulaiman. His fame as a kutyapi player is known all over Maguindanao. In Cotabato City, for instance, his tapes, homemade recordings manufactured by enterprising native businessmen, are very much in demand. After he won the Gamaba Award last year, he toured in Hong Kong and Japan giving kutyapi performances.
Pero meron din silang distinction mga kutyapi players. Samaon, of course, definitely displays the skill that is really required in the art.
Yet these do not detract from his identity as a member of his community and a man of his faith. The mosque in Libutan is reputedly the oldest in all of Maguindanao. A new structure is currently being built. But the pulpit or membar of the original mosque still remains. It is a badge of honor for any imam to stand before the congregation in Libutan, enveloped in the ancient prestige of the Libutan membar. It is an honor that Samaun Sulaiman relishes as the imam of Libutan. As imam, Samaun presides over all aspects of the devout community's life. He presides over the Friday services and every day of the week calls the faithful to prayer. He also officiates at the ritual slaughter of goats, at the ceremonial weighing in of children, at birthdays and at the final bathing of the dead. In short, he is an integral part of his community's religious life, a man steeped in the philosophy of Islam. But he is also very much a part of his community's everyday life as a barber. And you know what they say about barbers. They are every man's confidant. Thus, it is not surprising when one meets Sulaiman to behold a gentle, slightly quizzical face. A face that seems to have seen everything. A face that has looked at birth and death, war and peace, times of hunger and plenty. And all this knowledge of life pours into his playing of the kutyapi. The kutyapi is a two-stringed lute with counterparts among the different indigenous groups of Mindanao. Among the Blaan, it is called the faglong. The Tibolis call it the higalong, and among the Manobos, it is called the kudlong. The Maguindanao kutyapi has two strings. One, the sumayog, is not attached to the beeswax frets and is plucked to produce the rhythmic drone. The beat, you might say. The other string, called the damalan, is attached to the beeswax frets and allows melodies to be played in two sets of scales. When the drone and the melody are combined by a skillful player, the result is an instrument of such delicacy and subtle refinement that it echoes closely the patterns of Maguindanao language and manner of speech. To the Maguindanao, listening to the kutyapi is like listening to a distilled rendition of his own language. So closely does the kutyapi follow the patterns of Maguindanao's speech that it is used to communicate messages, both personal and diplomatic, exhort the faithful, as well as to arouse emotion and erotic desire. A courtly instrument, the kutyapi is well suited to the introspective, diplomatic manner of the Maguindanao. It is also, in this day and age, becoming an oddity and rarity in many areas of Mindanao.
I was then about 11 years old. A known kutyapi player by the name of Pinagunay taught me the art. He was then 35 years old. He lived in Maganoy, where I also lived. I didn't have to pay any fee. After a year of studying, I can already go my own. But Pinagunay sees to it I get tried along with his other students.
Sulaiman spoke of the elements that make for a fine kutyapi. Like a Stradivarius, A good kutiapi has a full-bodied sound, textured and rich. In Maguindanao, the word is matimul.
I can distinguish a good kutiapi from the rest if it has a full-bodied sound and the frets are of good material. The kutiapi consists of the lawas, which is the body, ngilong or nose, pakal, also called angit or the lever, sungkul or tower, and there is the opposite nose, pangilot or tightening the handle or tightening handle, the pangandungan, also called damalan, which is the frets.
Even more interesting, the kutiapi has a set of melodic styles, all of which demonstrate the many forms of expression the instrument is capable of. These are the dinaladay, the linapu, the minuday, and the binalig. Each style representing an aspect of Maguindanao life, from the courtly to the romantic to the sacred.
To play the dinaladay, this is how the movable lead frets should be placed. The dinaladay is an opening or introductory piece. For instance, in social gatherings where kutiapi is to be played, one has to do the dinaladay first before other piece. Linapo is traditionally played by members of the Maguindanao royalty, the Datu and the Bay. Minudal is played by lovers who is about to break their relationship, like married couples who is going to get divorced. Binalig is interpreted with the verse, I have found a bird from paradise which resides by the grave of the prophet.
Which says, or the meaning is, I have found a bird that lives in the...
And yet, within these strict patterns, Samaon is able to weave his own compositions. Here with his students Samura Jaman on the kubing and Ismail Ahmad on the flute is Samaon Sulaiman's own composition, Talupuka Minanda.
Walang manlilikha ang maaring mabuhay at magtrabaho nang hindi nakikipag-ugnayan sa iba pang manlilikha. In Samaon Sulaiman's network of friends, students, and co-musicians, he finds yet another community. And this community links the Maguindanao to the past, even as it takes him into the future. When we return, we hear voices of other Maguindanao virtuosos. A blind flutist, an intense and impassioned poet, an ensemble of musicians, even the Muslim equivalent of pop. These worlds interweave with the Samaon Sulaimans to create the whole spectrum of Maguindanao music.
In the community of Libutan, there is suddenly a new awareness of the ancient Kutyapi. Ever since his winning the Gamaba Award, Samaon's stature in the neighborhood has increased doubly. He is no longer just imam, no longer just a barber or an elder. He has become a man worthy of emulation. Already, he is planning to use his Gamaba prize money to set up a learning center for students of the Kutyapi, a worthy dream that has attracted young Muslims. But he is not the only Kutyapi player in Libutan. The community is full of other artists of the Kutyapi. There is Samaon's own younger brother, Bitul Sulaiman. There is the old man, Zamura Jaman, whose specialty is the kubing or juice harp. There is the farmer, Ali Ahmad, who was so captivated by the story that Adam used music as his first plaything that he asked Samaon to teach him. In the afternoons, when the work is done, these men meet and with the younger men play their kutyapis. The creative effort becomes communal, spontaneous, and instructional. In many ways, Samaon is only passing on the knowledge that he gained from his teacher Pinagunay. And just as Samaon grew to become his own artist, so did one of his own students, Ismail Ahmad. The sprightly, wiry, and talkative man in his late 30s, Ismail is also a popular artist whose recordings are much sought after in Cotabato. Like Samaon, he can play on many different instruments other than the kutyapi. Unlike Samaon, Ismail has been blind since birth. And yet, his eagerness to learn led him to Samaon. After Ismail learned to play, Samaon presented his pupil to his master Pinagunay. The master's verdict was telling. Pinagunay said to Ismail that he had achieved the same level of artistry as Samaon, but the only thing that separated the two was Ismail's blindness. To their fans all over Maguindanao, there is a debate as to who of the two is a better player. But such a matter hardly bothers the two friends who spend their spare time in a good-natured kutyapi jamming session. Or perhaps a chat about their mentor Pinagunay and all that they could have learned from him. An apt attitude for all city artists to learn from the folk artists. A few kilometers from Libutan in Maganoy is the old town of Datupiang. Looking at the dry and dusty buildings, the visitor would never imagine that he is in the very heartland of Maguindanao. Only when one hears the echoes of Kulintang does one imagine what the town must once have been like. If in Libutan the Kutyapi players are all men, the Kulintang players we encountered in Datupiang were all women. And what an exquisite irony to discover that the Maguindanao women could so adroitly handle this bravura collection of gongs. The kulintang ensemble is composed of 4 parts. The actual kulintang, an 8-gong set laid out horizontally, played here by Salbanen Bekay. The agong, a twin set of 2 wide-rimmed gongs suspended from the ceiling, played by King Kang Nuk. The dabakan, which is supposed to be a drum to provide the rhythm. In this case, Dampung Samdula makes do with a plastic container. The gandingan, a set of 3 bossed gongs with narrow rims, played by Kalsuma Pagayul. Then there is the bamandal, the lead gong, which both introduces the piece and keeps time for the entire ensemble. Here it is played by a promising young man whose knowledge of the kulintangan is impressive for his age. Doc Salik is his name. Here, the kulintang ensemble of Datupiang performs Binali. The antique gong set that they are playing is a treasured heirloom of Dampung Samdula's family. The resonance and harmony of this set is captured in the phrase, lingan-lingan sa bagol, like the unceasing harmony of the river waves, an apt metaphor indeed.
Jung si patama kami kapag banaliti kasutano pinbinugisan, nabamasidon sa kugdungan, napandidon sa gayong kung kamagilit sa batan. Kaya nin arat o na so arat o batari-tari babakaling gangarita kun sa arat.
If the courtly kutyapi and kulintang are being preserved in their classical forms, other arts move on into the present times. Among these is the bayok, which has developed from courtly romantic poetry into an impassioned admonition, a fiery, assaultive commentary on current events. And one man is responsible for giving this courtly art a new dynamism. He is Sumilalaw Dimagal.
Bayok is a metaphorical expression regarding what one is trying to drive out. This mostly deal about love affair. It may be done between by one person or between 2. It may be it may be used in different aspects. Like for example, regarding love affair, regarding in my case, like economically, politically, socially, religiously. It must be rhythmic, idiomatically expressed in a form of in a musical. It has a musical tone. Own style. I'm referring to my own style. I use it. I do it in a rhythmic way. Meaning when I say rhythmic, when I say things in the first word, in the first sentence, then the following sentence will be balanced in terms of syllable. Well, as an interested, I became interested in bayok when I saw the situation of the people in Mindanao, both Christians and Muslims. So I would like, because I would like to, I like to express my own sentiment regarding the situation. So the only way I know is to express it in bayok.
In his impassioned yet always rhythmic and metaphoric commentary, Sumilala was given the ancient bayok a new strength and relevance. His art represents the political bent which may yet give to the traditional folk arts a link to the present. Just as the dayunday that you are hearing now represents the pop phase of Maguindanao music, an extremely popular art form that is likened to the rap. The dayunday is a recent innovation. Its artists are the most popular, and no big gathering is ever complete without a dayunday joust. Though the traditionalists will scoff at the dayunday as the most corrupted of musical forms, we cannot help but be impressed at how Maguindanao pop music has chosen to borrow heavily from the rich musical tradition of the people.
Ang lahat raw ng sining ay magkaugnay. Kung gayon nga, saan at papano nagkakatugma ang trabaho ng naghahabi at nagkukutyapi, ng panday at nagbabayok? When we return, we find out the subtle interconnections between the music of Samaon Sulaiman and other Maguindanao artists. If the art of the Maguindanao is indeed the art of subtlety, then the tones and the half-tones of the kutyapi may be reflected in the nuances of a malong or even a brass bowl. In today's rapidly changing Maguindanao, what is being transformed and what is unchanging? We listen to the voices of the weavers and brassmiths of Kalanganan and Bulalo.
While the Maranaos delight in the bright juxtapositions of color and ornamentation, the Maguindanao weavers of old valued an almost imperceptible gradation of colors and shades. Such delicate shifts in color were always the norm in both old silk and cotton malongs. If ever a piece called for drama, the weaver would achieve it through use of two contrasting colors, purple as a favorite background for white or brown, for instance. This magnificent ikat silk malong shows off classical Maguindanao taste at its most extravagant, the bluish design creating a web of lines against a purple background. Today, weaving is still a vibrant art among the womenfolk of Bulalo near Cotabato City. The tastes of the market, however, have been changing, they say, as more and more a profusion of design and color make their way through the once restrained Maguindanao malong. If the weavers of Bulalo are adjusting their weaving to the changing Maguindanao tastes, then the brass workers of Kalanganan are trying to revive the art of lost wax casting. The cooperative supplies the city's tourists and dealers with the obligatory miniature cannons, wall hangings, and other purely decorative objects. Gone, it seems, are the days when the foundry's master craftsman, Ingan Mang, would create stunning gadors and carandas for Maguindanao royalty. Here, he repairs an old piece using bits of wax as the mold for broken parts. His son, Muhammad, is at least proud of the fact that the foundry still turns out complete kulintang sets, not just for decor, as each set is tuned and corrected in the traditional tukul method by his mother, Undung Mang. Where does the foundry get their materials? From old shell casings, from armalites and uzis. An apt metaphor in this land full of metaphor for how people take instruments of death and mold these into instruments of life. Life indeed. The Maguindanao world has been changed by civil war and rebellion, by fierce ideology and continuing struggle. Yet, with a relative peace, the Maguindanaos are once more singing and weaving and creating, as they should, as they always have.
In our search for music and song and other related arts, how could we forget food? When we return, we take a peek into a Maguindanao kitchen to sample some delicacies.
A sweet that isn't so sweet. That's the Maguindanao tagtag, a crispy, deep-fried munchable of rice and coconut milk, mixed to a gooey consistency and then strained through a coconut shell to get that unique stringy shape. This is only one of the products of the Maguindanao Delicacies Producers Association. Mrs. Mina Alba shows us more of those subtly sweet Maguindanao delicacies. To make a kutyapi, craftsman sa Ulanan takes a piece of softwood from the kapok or dadyangas tree. The instrument is shaped, sanded, and carved with only the most unobtrusive okir. There is none of the flowery overkill, no profusion of design elements. It is the player who takes the responsibility of tuning the instrument, polishing and decorating it, all adding to the highly personalized character of each kutyapi.
We leave Maguindanao enlightened, refreshed by the proof that art and creative effort continue to spring from the grassroots, even after so much has been lost. We feel renewed by the calm of Samaon Sulaiman, an artist, a man of his faith, a member of the community, a Maguindanao Virtuoso who continues to create and express in the context of a rapidly changing culture. We feel inspired by the efforts of other Maguindanao artists, inspired by their humility, by their experience, by the team effort that results in a whole and unified art. We feel, above all, glad to have brought it to you. Sana'y lumawak ang ating pananaw tungkol sa ating mga tradisyonal na manlilikha. At sana'y napatunayan namin na hindi lamang sa lungsod maaring umusbong at lumaganap ang sining. Lumalaganap ito kung saan nabubuhay ang Pilipino na may kulturang dapat ipagmalaki. Next time, we take you to the highlands of Palawan to discover among its people another group of Gawad Manlilikha ng Bayan winners. Sa ngalan ng lahat ng manlilikha, ito po si Susan Calo Medina nagsasabing, huwag maghindayuhan sa sariling bayan. Alaikum Musalam.